Do you regret marrying your husband? The host thought he had her trapped, but Usha Vance's response left him scrambling in front of millions. The cameras were rolling, the lights glaring, and the tension in the studio was thick, thick enough to cut with a knife. Seated upright in his chair, a well-known liberal commentator allowed a smirk to creep onto his face as he shuffled through his notes. This was his usual game. He had played it countless times before, luring guests in, making them comfortable, only to hit them with a question meant to throw them off balance. But Usha Vance? She wasn't just any guest. Dressed in a simple yet elegant navy blazer, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that commanded attention. A Yale-educated attorney with sharp intellect and composed poise, she had tackled far tougher situations than a live television debate. But tonight was different. The conversation had followed a predictable path, discussing politics, her legal career, and, of course, her husband, Senator J.D. Vance. Then, in a calculated move, the host leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk, tilting his head just slightly. His tone was casual, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. Do you ever regret marrying J.D. Vance? The question landed like a brick, disrupting the flow of conversation in an instant. The air in the room shifted. This wasn't curiosity, it was a trap. A move designed to either bait her into saying something that could be used against her or force her into an uncomfortable defense of her own marriage. A few quiet gasps rippled through the audience. Some leaned forward, sensing the moment was about to take a dramatic turn. The studio crew knew they had struck gold. Even the camera operators instinctively adjusted their focus, bracing for what was about to unfold. The host, a man who had built his career on catching guests off guard, barely hid his satisfaction. He had crafted the question carefully, innocuous on the surface, but sharp enough to draw blood. He had seen others stumble before, political spouses caught off guard, their hesitation, nervous laughter, or fumbled responses serving as perfect soundbites. But Usha? She didn't stumble. She didn't fumble. And she certainly didn't laugh awkwardly. Instead, she let the question sit. Silence stretched across the studio, thick and unrelenting. The audience shifted in their seats. The host watched her closely, waiting for any sign that he had rattled her. But instead of panic, all he got was a slow, measured smile. A beat passed. Then another. The smirk on the host's face flickered, just slightly. He wasn't prepared for what was coming next. Shifting slightly in her chair, Usha finally took a breath. No anger. No discomfort. Just something far more unsettling to him, amusement. Regret? She repeated, as if he had just asked whether she regretted having breakfast that morning. Her voice was steady, carrying not even a hint of hesitation. The host blinked, his fingers twitching slightly against the desk. He had expected her to scramble, maybe deflect, maybe laugh nervously. Instead, she was taking her time, treating this as if she was the one in control. She crossed one leg over the other, adjusted in her chair, and then, finally, spoke again. You know, she said, tilting her head just enough to signal she was about to turn the tables, I always find these kinds of questions fascinating. There was something deliberate in her wording. She wasn't just responding, she was making a statement. The host opened his mouth slightly, perhaps to interject, but she wasn't done. I could sit here and list all the reasons I love and respect my husband, the values we share, the way he supports me, the life we've built together. She paused, smiling again, her voice unwavering. But somehow, I don't think that's the answer you're looking for, is it? For the briefest moment, the host's expression wavered. The camera caught it, that tiny flicker of realization. He had walked into this thinking he was leading the conversation, but suddenly, he was no longer in control. The audience could feel it. He shifted in his chair. Well, I was just curious. Usha smoothly cut in. Were you? She raised an eyebrow, still holding that same composed expression. Because, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall ever seeing a male politician's wife get asked this question on live television. A murmur rippled through the audience. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. The host blinked. She didn't let him finish. It's interesting, isn't it? she continued, her tone light, almost conversational. Women in politics, whether we hold office ourselves or are simply married to those who do, are so often asked if we regret the choices we've made. But funny enough, I can't seem to recall a male guest ever sitting in this chair and being asked if he regrets supporting his wife's career. Now, the audience was fully engaged. The host, struggling to regain control, forced a tight smile. Well, I just thought, given some of his positions. Usha tilted her head.
Ah.
So that's what this is about. And just like that, the conversation had flipped. Too late, the host realized he had lost control of the moment. But Usha was just getting started. Leaning forward slightly, she locked eyes with him. "Let me ask you something," she said, voice calm but pointed. "Would you ever ask Michelle Obama if she regrets marrying Barack?" Silence. The host's mouth opened, but no words came out. The audience reacted instantly, quiet chuckles, murmurs, knowing glances. They understood exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just answering the question, she was exposing the bias behind it. The host finally found his voice, but the confidence was gone. "Well, I mean, that's not really the same, isn't it?" she interjected smoothly, raising an eyebrow. Because when a woman stands by a man whose views don't align with mainstream media, suddenly it's a questionable decision. But when it's the other way around, it's a love story. Interesting. The audience was fully tuned in now, watching the host struggle. He forced a chuckle, trying to brush it off. "I was just giving you the opportunity to speak for yourself, that's all." Usha didn't blink. "And I appreciate that," she replied, her voice steady. "But I also recognize when I'm being handed a loaded question." More murmurs. The host's smirk?
Gone.
She shifted in her seat, looking perfectly at ease. "I don't regret marrying my husband. I'm proud of our life. I'm proud of his work, just as he's proud of mine. But if the question is whether I stand by him despite political differences, let me turn that back on you. Do you stand by every single political stance your spouse has ever taken?" The host inhaled sharply. He hesitated. Usha caught it. "I mean, that's different." She raised an eyebrow. "How so?" No answer. The moment had slipped from his fingers. And the audience? They knew it. By the next morning, clips of Usha's response were everywhere. Twitter exploded. Memes circulated. Even those who didn't align with her politically had to admit she had handled the moment flawlessly. Liberal commentators, on the other hand, scrambled to downplay the exchange. Some insisted the host's question had been misinterpreted, while others claimed Usha had simply dodged it rather than responding directly. But none of that mattered. The video was everywhere. Clips of her response flooded Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, even TikTok. Someone set her most cutting remarks to dramatic music, interspersed with slow-motion shots of the host blinking in stunned silence. Within 24 hours, the clip had racked up millions of views. Political figures couldn't resist weighing in. Some Democrats steered clear of the topic altogether, unwilling to wade into what was now an undeniable PR disaster for the host. Others attempted damage control, dismissing the outrage as nothing more than a manufactured conservative narrative. Republicans, on the other hand, wasted no time seizing the moment. Prominent senators, commentators, and influencers hailed Usha's response as a masterclass in shutting down media bias. But the most revealing reactions came from everyday viewers. The comment sections of news sites and social media platforms were packed with responses, not just from political diehards, but from ordinary people who had experienced similar bias firsthand. Women, in particular, resonated with Usha's point. "This isn't even about politics. People have questioned my choices just because I didn't fit their expectations." Good for her for standing her ground. She didn't raise her voice, didn't get defensive, just completely dismantled him. That's how it's done. I don't care what side you're on. Asking a woman if she regrets her marriage because her husband has opinions? That's just condescending. And then came the think pieces. Journalists and opinion writers scrambled to explain why the clip had struck such a chord. Some argued it was about marital loyalty in an era of extreme political division. Others saw it as a broader indictment of how women are treated in the media. A few even tried to spin the moment, suggesting that Usha had used her legal expertise to manipulate the conversation.